Hello, everyone. This is Adam Meister, the BitcoinMeister, the Disrupt Meister. Welcome to Today in Bitcoin. Today is February 22nd, 2017. Tuesday, all twos there. I have a special guest on the show today. You all know him. It's Andy Hoffman of Miles Franklin Precious Metals. You know him from talking about gold and silver and precious metals, but now you also know that he's a big fan of Bitcoin, and he's been talking to Tone Bays. He's been talking Bitcoin on his blog. We're going to link to all that below. But Andy, welcome on the show again.
Yes, it's been a couple of weeks, and I think we were sub 1,000 last time, and here we are within a few dollars of the all-time high.
Well, I want to say something. You're doing a great job. You might not even realize you're doing this, but you're spreading the word about Bitcoin. You are a Bitcoin marketer. Just talking about the interactions of gold and silver and the precious metal community with the Bitcoin community and how the two, they can go hand in hand. I think you're creating this friendship between the two communities, and I commend you a lot.
Well, that's what I'm trying to do. I mean, I'm trying to, at the same time, I'm trying to help my business, which is precious metals. But really, it's more of, look, what I've done for the past now, it'll be 15 years of commentating on the sector in May, is try to help make a difference in the world. And it's, you know, fighting against what I call the gold cartel is very, very difficult. And because the biggest reason that we have all of the political and social and economic problems in the world is the fiat currency system that came around in 1971 and has caused all the wealth disparity and debt and currency collapses and now political revolutions. And a major reason that it's gone on this long is this gold cartel has surreptitiously held the price down and enabled all the money printing. And until Bitcoin came around, I not only haven't seen a single other asset class with any, in my view, merit as far as storage of value, but I didn't see a really major threat to the cartel other than simple supply and demand. But as far as, you know, the way I see it, the way the explosion of Bitcoin, the technology and the understanding of it around the world and what it means, I think it's the biggest threat to the powers that be cumulatively that I've ever seen, probably that anyone has ever seen in monetary history. And so that's going to be good for precious metals. It's going to be good for Bitcoin. And ultimately, it's going to be good for humanity.
Now, I think one of your philosophies is buy and hold precious metals. Am I correct?
You couldn't be more correct.
So that you have attracted a lot of savers type of people with that mentality. And it seems to me that these people, these wise investors who don't like to play games, flip things, when they get into Bitcoin, they're interested in Bitcoin for the same reason. They just want to buy and hold it. They're just into safety. And I have to commend you for getting those type of people into Bitcoin, because we need, in this space, we have too many, I think, vocal people who are just like, I'm a trader, I'm a miner, and they're not even really those things. And they're leading people down paths of confusion and danger. While you are getting people into Bitcoin and just, you're trying to calm them down, say, hey, get a Trezor where you can save it, and hey, buy and hold. So, I mean, what do you have to say about the buy and hold philosophy in Bitcoin?
Well, I have certainly learned a lot over a very long career. I'm 46 years old, but you would probably think I'm 66, given all the lives I've had in the business world and all that I've seen, starting back when I was a bond trader at Cantor Fitzgerald back in the early 1990s, and the buy side and the sell side on Wall Street, and then in the mining industry, and now in the precious metal bullion industry. I've seen a lot of criminality. I've seen a lot of corruption. I've seen a lot of Ponzi schemes, a lot of scams, and most of all, a lot of money lost. And you know, right now, I think we're on the cusp of history. And the lessons that I learned, I mean, actually, you talk all the time about, you know, people speculating in altcoins and not just understanding the philosophy of buy and hold. Look, when I first got into precious metals in 2002, I owned only mining companies. Not Bitcoin miners, gold and silver miners. And I had a huge run up, kind of like, oh, I don't know, like Ethereum going from nothing to $20. I made more money than I ever made in my life. And then when they crashed, I lost most of it. And then I worked in the mining industry for 5 years, and I realized that not only are the stocks extremely risky and rigged, but so is the mining industry itself. And I said to myself, starting in 2008, what's the point of this? If you think that gold and silver are going to go up that much, and I think that they will go up, well, before Bitcoin came around, I didn't think anything had a chance to go up as much as gold and silver are going to go up. Why would you take the risks of speculating on mining companies where so much can go wrong, and so much has gone wrong? And I mean, we're talking about the mining industry, and stocks have been decimated for years while the gold and silver price have steadily moved up. And that's exactly what you're seeing in Bitcoin. People get excited when it moves up, and then they think, oh, I'm going to make more money and all these other things, and they wind up losing it all, and they lose a lot of sleep. When in the big picture, as you know, you said all along, if you want to make money in this sector, just buy the damn Bitcoin and hold it, and keep it as far away from exchanges where A, they can steal it, and B, you can click and sell it as you can. Because think of how many people sold in the first week of January, and then when the first week of February, you get scared. Just put it on your Trezor or your other stuff. Leave it alone. It's going up. Because when you think about it, okay, Bitcoin is what, a $15 or $18 billion market cap? I mean, that is a micro cap stock in today's world. It's like buying, you've talked about it before, this is like buying Apple at the bottom. Because to think that there's downside of a $15 billion, quote, stock of something that's going to change the world is comical. And the same really goes for gold and silver at their current suppressed valuations. But it's really two different animals, both of which are going to go up for different reasons, but in the same time, the same reason. We're all in this together, defeating the powers that be that have destroyed the monetary world.
Yes, I think your message of staying calm is one that I have definitely tried to tell people. Don't panic, people. Do not panic. I mean, don't get into the mindset where you got to flip and trade. Put it on your Trezor, and people can email me at adam@trezorhelp.com if they need help installing their Trezor and setting it up. It is really a great way. It just makes you feel better. It makes you feel that your Bitcoin is safe, and it keeps you away from temptation of selling it.
Well, now, you know what the great thing about the Trezor is, and the thing I've told people about investing in precious metals, the best way of understanding what it's like to own gold and silver is to actually own it, okay? Just go to your neighborhood coin shop and buy yourself a silver eagle. It's about the same weight as a gold eagle. Hold it in one hand, and then hold a quarter or a dime in the other hand, which feels like a feather. And you know it's worthless, and you know that it was printed out of thin air with no intrinsic value. And in that hand, you're going to have that silver gold eagle, especially if you've done any work reading up about the difficulty, what it takes to get that out of the earth, and the thousands of years of value that is preserved. And the same thing goes for Bitcoin. It's one thing to say, oh, I own Bitcoin. I like the concept of Bitcoin. I'm looking into it. Or even I went on Coinbase and I bought it and I have it in my account. It's another thing to actually send it to your device, and then from that device, maybe send it somewhere else, and you go, oh my God, this is the easiest thing in the entire world. There's no banks, there's no fees. It takes milliseconds to happen, and I control it. No one can take it from me.
Yes, excellent points about real usage of Bitcoin. Playing around with it like that is awesome, and it's a great feeling. Now, the audience actually has some questions here. Now, I don't know if you can actually answer all these questions. Now, Andy just said, buy and hold Bitcoin. Obviously, he's a Bitcoin fan, but someone wanted to know what you thought about altcoins, Monero, and Litecoin specifically.
Well, the answer is, and I'm not going to diss them. Yeah. Look, in gold mining stocks, if you get the right ones at the right time, you can make some outsized gains. There's no doubt. Of course, in the case of Bitcoin, which in itself to me is almost like a mining stock because it's so small right now, I'm not sure what's the point of taking that risk. I mean, obviously, you know, a gold mining stock has the potential of going up a lot more than the price of gold, but I don't know that there's many even altcoins that have a chance at going up more than the price of Bitcoin itself. But on that line, if you want to speculate in these things, it is the equivalent of buying a mining stock, because you can take, I mean, look, the second biggest altcoin is Ethereum, by far. In fact, there's nothing even close to it. And if you look at its history, it's been wrought with absolute failure, massive crashes, uncertainty, hard forks. And that's the the only one that's even close. And then you got all these other ones. I mean, you could talk about Monero and Dash and stuff, but they are tiny. I mean, tiny little things. And yes, it's possible that, yeah, the ETF comes around and Bitcoin goes to 3,000. Everyone's like, well, we're going to speculate in Dash because it's only a 30 million market cap and it'll go more. Well, maybe it will and maybe it won't. But to me, there's no use taking the risks when Bitcoin is probably going to go up more than 99% of all the investments in history on its own.
Yeah, why risk your Bitcoin? Why risk your Bitcoin? That's what I say. Now, here's a question. I don't know if you can ask this question.
I can answer any question.
Well, what percentage of your portfolio should be in Bitcoin, and what should be the percentage in precious metals? I don't know if you.
Well, there's no should, as I tell my wife. There's no such word as should. It's just your personal preference. In fact, I wrote an article years ago called, again, I write every day. I work Miles Franklin Precious Metals. I write every day for free, and all these podcasts are all free. It's part of our marketing of the firm. And I wrote this article years ago called Protection Continuum. Go to milesfranklin.com and put it in the search box and find it. And basically it says the answer is to that question is whatever you feel most comfortable with. I mean, I'm happy to tell people what I do. I mean, I have of my liquid net worth, like not including like a house or, you know, furniture and stuff, it's like 3/4 precious metals and about 15% Bitcoin, the rest cash. That's what I do.
Wow.
Frankly, if it weren't for my wife, I'd have more Bitcoin. But for some people, they feel comfortable with 2% Bitcoin. With you, it's probably 90%. It really depends on what you feel comfortable with. I have enough history with precious metals that holding 3/4 of my liquid net worth in it, I couldn't be more comfortable. Then again, I'd probably be more comfortable, at least as comfortable with more Bitcoin, because the more I learn about it, the more that I feel that it's analogous to precious metals in many ways.
Great answer, and very honest. You said your portfolio there. That is great. Do you you don't happen to own any altcoins though, do you?
No, and I won't. I mean, look, it's always, look, if Bitcoin goes berserk or gold goes berserk and I have this massive wealth effect and I feel like, let's just I'm becoming smarter in this stuff, I'll give it a shot. That's possible. But, you know, after my experience with the mining shares and the mining industry and seeing what's going on in the altcoin industry, I just say to myself, I'm getting too old for this. I have no interest in losing sleep over speculations. I'd rather just simply own the real thing. And again, the thing with that people are also not understanding, when Bitcoin and gold and silver go up, it's not going to be in a vacuum. It's going to be against a backdrop of other asset classes losing value, and certainly losing value in relative terms. So you're going to become rich compared to other people at even more of a rapid pace, and you're simply going to become nominally rich, at which point you go, is it really worth my time? I mean, wouldn't you rather just enjoy your life and not worry all the time about whether there's going to be some announcement that the Monero code has been hacked, or that the Chinese government don't like this, or you know, or something like that? I mean, it's just not worth it. You will learn that in time, that the risk of investments will wear you down as much mentally as it does financially. Take my word for it.
Beautiful answer. Well, here's an interesting question, and I've actually wondered about this too. Are you right-handed or left-handed?
Left-handed.
Wow, you're creative. I am right-handed, if anyone was wondering. Okay, ETF approval. Do you think the Winklevoss ETF is going to get approved? Do you have a prediction, an opinion about it? Go on now.
Yes, I have plenty of predictions and opinions about it. And I thought that was funny. You were talking yesterday about how they had to put in the prospectus what would happen if there's a hard fork. And the fact is, my guess is, especially because, keep in mind, people, the SEC chairman was just fired with the Obama leaving, and they haven't even appointed a new SEC chairman. And the new SEC chairman they're trying to appoint is from, guess what, Goldman Sachs. So, I mean, just the SEC itself right now is in the middle of chaos. And the fact is, even putting the Winklevoss brothers, putting that into the prospectus, I doubt the SEC even has a comprehension of what that means. It sounds bad, but to them, they probably don't even understand it. My view is that governments, with a very, very small handful of people as exceptions, have not a clue about how the technology works. And the thing that they're most worried about, Bitcoin, is that it's going to compete with their fiat currency. So I don't even think that new prospectus thing even matters. I think they are just terrified of what it means. And I sit here and I say to myself, they would be absolutely nuts to approve this thing, because not only would the price explode higher just from speculation, I mean, it may explode higher and then come right back down, but between the speculation and the interest that Wall Street would get into in it, and therefore the education that would spread about how it works, would be so dangerous to their fiat system. It's almost insane. So to me, honestly, if that thing gets approved, I'm the least conspiratorial person around. I would say that there is a major, major agenda inside of something probably very bad about happen in the world, because Bitcoin is a major threat of theirs, and that ETF to me is a major threat to their dollar hegemony.
So logically speaking, it will not be passed, you think, but if there's some massive conspiracy, it will be.
Yes, the only reason that it could be passed is that these people are trying to take down their own system, because it's going to be an immense amount of increased attention to something they definitely do not want to get attention right now. I mean, look at the Chinese, how much attention they're giving to it right now, because their currency is collapsing. It's on the verge of a devaluation, and all the capital outflows, they're terrified of what it means. The US dollar right now is not having that issue, so it's kind of like in Star Trek, like the Borg. They're trying to ignore it and pretend it's not a threat. But as soon as there's some kind of crisis or there's too much attention on it, it's going to become a threat. And I really don't think that the government wants to give Bitcoin the kind of attention that it doesn't need to give it.
Beautiful. Now we're speaking. We're talking about predictions. Let's move into the future a little bit further. The 2020 Bitcoin halving. I'm looking forward to it. I'm sure you are also. Do you have a price prediction for Bitcoin after the 2020 halving?
Well, if I remember correctly, maybe 6 months ago, you said Bitcoin would be $1,000 by the 2020 halving, which is brilliant, by the way. It's brilliant marketing, because you're trying to lower expectations and get people to understand this is a long-term investment. And believe me, if it went up from 700 to 1,000 over 3 years, you'd be doing well. But the fact is, you knew and we all know that Bitcoin's adoption is going to be a lot more rapid than that, and there'll be bumps and bruises along the way. But by the time we get to 2020, especially with what I have a feeling the competition in the industry, and there won't be as much free energy around anymore because there'll be so much attention. Probably the cost of mining a Bitcoin will be several $1,000s by then. And just from an economic standpoint, of course, it's going to be at least that level, especially because probably by 2020, it's going to be a major force in the world. So I'm not going to throw out a specific number out there, but if you're telling me that it's going to be less than 5 digits by the time we have the halving 3.5 years from now, I would say that you're crazy, because I would say that the odds that Bitcoin is not a major force in the world by the middle of 2020 are very small.
Wow. I like to temper people's expectations. I like to calm everyone down. I said, 1,000 because it was around $500, $600, $700. I want people to buy, because I know in my heart of heart, it's going to be $1,000 by 2020. So I think people have to think of it that way. Like, what do they know in the year 2020? What do they think it's going to be worth? And if it's a lot more than it is now, then they should be trying to buy as much as possible now, and then hold it, not play any games with it. So
and what you want to do is, what you don't want is to create hype, and that's the problem with these altcoins. That's the problem with mining stocks, and that's the point of so many things in the financial world, because it's not even just pump and dump. It's just the natural tendency of markets to pump and dump, especially when something gets hyped up too much. And people, if you're listening to this, you're probably one of the elite few who are researching and learning, and you're realizing yourself, well, yeah, of course it's going to be worth more. I mean, look at these crappy little stocks that double and triple for doing nothing. And this is a technology. I mean, I've said many times in the past year, I think the 2 greatest inventions of our lifetime are the internet itself and Bitcoin. So of course it's going to be worth more. But if you set yourself up in this mode, like, I want to buy it like it's a internet stock because I'm buying it at 1,000, I think it's going to go to 20,000, you're setting yourself up for failure. And also the industry sets itself up for disappointment, and then you have a lot of selling. Because remember, there's only 15 million of these things outstanding. It's still a very, very thin industry. And when news comes out that's either bullish or bearish, it moves a lot. So if you set up expectations, you can have some just as big moves down as up, and you really need to set yourself in your mind, it's okay, it's okay, it's going to go up a little bit, it's going to go up a little bit, and then let yourself be surprised when it goes up a lot more, because it's going to go up a lot more, but it's going to, along the way, scare you many times.
What you said about the internet and Bitcoin being the two greatest inventions of your lifetime, that I hope that's true. I believe it. I want Bitcoin to prove it. I want Bitcoin to prove it. I know the internet is obviously the greatest of my lifetime, but if Bitcoin is number 2 or number 1 with that, we are in for quite a ride. If that's the consensus by the year 2030, let's say, that Bitcoin was one of the greatest inventions of the last 50 years. Now, on that same note, we're talking about 2020. How many altcoins will be legitimate in 2020? Will there be a top tier still, or will by then they'll all be forgotten, or will there be some specialized ones?
Well, it's a fantastic question, because it's not like it's not like mining stocks are used as money. I mean, they are speculations based on the price of gold and a bunch of other factors in the market. And I view in many ways altcoins just to be derivatives. They may find niches, or they may just find niches for temporary spikes in hype, like Ethereum did. But look, if the world is going to go digital, and I believe it is, and the reason I believe it is, and the same reason I believe we'll never have a gold standard, is because I don't believe after this current incarnation of currency destruction that any government will ever again be trusted to issue money. And that's the beauty of Bitcoin, because you don't need a government to approve it. People do it anyway. In fact, the whole thing, like Bitcoin going up this week, they say the Chinese traders are just finding like local Bitcoins and stuff like that. That's the whole point. At some point, if it's just the internet and you could just hide all your stuff on Trezors and all kinds of stuff, the government won't be able to stop it. And that's going to be the future of the world, is getting away from these governments that have caused destruction. So look, if you get to a world where the world actually is digital based on cryptocurrency, and you know very well that the technology is going to exponentially improve, because all the resources that are going to go into it, yeah, there'll probably be plenty of other cryptocurrencies that are around doing all kinds of different things. I'm not sure what those things are. Will Bitcoin layer all those things in and become the king, or will there be one that does this and one that does that? I don't know, but I'm sure there'll be plenty of other virtual currencies that function in society for different reasons. I just can't tell you what they'd be worth as investments.
Okay, good answer. Here's a question from the audience, and it hits on precious metals a little bit. When Bitcoin approaches the price of gold, is this a significant junction, and how would this affect Bitcoin?
Well, no. The answer is a gigantic no, the biggest no I could possibly give. And the reason is this is perfect propaganda. This is perfect anti-gold propaganda. And it's at the same time it has been used as anti-Bitcoin propaganda, like when Bitcoin basically almost got to the price of gold, and right at the Mount Gox time, and all the gold people like me got mad and said it could never be more than gold, and then you're happy that it goes down. But the fact is, first of all, if you're in the precious metal sector and you're not doing your research on Bitcoin and realizing that it really has nothing to do with gold, and if anything, as I've said, I wrote a year ago, Bitcoin and precious metals, the twin destroyers of the fiat regime. They are complementary assets, and they are allies. So it really shouldn't matter anyway. But as for the actual nominal price, it's kind of a comedy to put the two together, because the nominal price is the same, but there's only 15 million Bitcoins outstanding, and I think there's 1 billion ounces of gold. So the market capitalization of Bitcoin is only like 15 billion. The market capitalization of gold is like $1 trillion or more. So it really doesn't matter. I mean, look, if you did a stock split on Bitcoin, which some people think that you should, you can have the Bitcoin price at $10. It would be worth just as much, and then you wouldn't say it's close to the price of gold. It's an immaterial number.
Interesting that you bring up the split of Bitcoin here, because we have a question. Here's a 2-part question. What do you think about segregated witness? Should it be approved? And what do you think of Bitcoin splitting? If Bitcoin splits, what will happen? So two right. Related questions.
Again, asking a technical non-guru, and in many ways you are as well. I mean, we both are guys who are just kind of common sense guys who are not programmers, or that kind of thing. Tone Vays, all these guys. Well, not all of them. A lot of those guys aren't programmers, but a guy like Tone is like you and me. He's just a common sense guy who's just doing research. Like I was an oil analyst, a gold analyst. I don't know anything about geology or engineering. I just know about common sense. And I'm sorry. And the question was about.
Well, what is your opinion of SegWit? Do you approve of SegWit? If you approve SegWit, and what do you and what would you think if Bitcoin split in two? Would that be a disaster or a good thing? Okay.
Right, SegWit. Okay. I don't know the technology, but based on all the smart people that talk about it, it seems like it makes sense, because as long as there's not a hard fork, what's the worst that can happen? It doesn't work. You know, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I don't even care if Bitcoin ever becomes day-to-day money. I think in many ways it already is, and it certainly will do more of that. But I'm more in this right now for the storage of value. So I really don't care if it does more transactions per second. But as for SegWit itself, look, any solution that doesn't hard fork it can't kill it. Now, but if you did a hard fork, that is something that would terrify me, because I see what happened to Ethereum and the chaos that's ensued afterward. And I say to myself, why would anyone even risk this? And we're not going to talk about Roger Ver again. We talked about this last time. But why anyone would want to promote something that has so much downside and so little near-term upside? I mean, what is it? Is it going to replace the dollar overnight if they hard fork it and it can go faster? No, that's going to take years and years for that to happen. But what is not going to take years and years to happen is going to be that it becomes a massive store of value that terrifies central banks and governments the way gold and silver have always done. Because, again, it's worth $15 billion. It can be worth $150 billion in the blink of an eye, and we'll all be much happier and richer. And then you can worry about whether it becomes faster in the future. So I would think that if you need consensus, if you can't get consensus for SegWit right now, who would think that you're going to get consensus for something that's going to break it in two? I just don't think that it will ever be allowed to happen. There's just too much at stake as far as the value of Bitcoin to even risk it.
Now, again, Andy is coming from a background where he has been an investor in traditional markets for a very long time. So when he talks about the fear of it splitting in two and the uncertainty that that would bring, just think about that for a second. Think about what that means. I mean, this guy is coming from experience. This is a disaster waiting to happen. If it's just how people couldn't learn the lesson from what happened to Ethereum is beyond both of our understanding. Do you agree with me, Andy? I mean,
I couldn't agree more. I mean, I wouldn't be able to sleep knowing. And they go, it's like, well, we'll decide which one's the best one. No, it's nothing to do with deciding. Andreas Antonopoulos, if there's one word, I'm asking you, let's see if you get it. If there's one word about Bitcoin where he says more than any other that describes it with an adjective, what would you say it is? And he uses a lot, but just immutable.
Yes, no, there's
okay?
what he uses. Okay.
And once you break that confidence that it's immutable, it opens up a whole can of words. And believe me, the whole world, the whole mainstream world is out to kill Bitcoin. And if you think like the gold people were angry at it when it went up to the gold price, think about how angry the rest of the world's going to be, like the governments, when it starts to challenge their fiat currencies, and how much they will pile on with the propaganda and trying to scare people away and the FUD about it. And not to mention the fact that there will be actual reason to do so. So again, but it's not going to happen. If you can only get 25% consensus on SegWit, why would anyone think that it's going to be 95% for something like that? No one, people like me wouldn't even dream of even voting. You wouldn't even get my vote. I would just laugh at something like that. So it's not going to happen. But I think people need to realize that, one, the uptake of Bitcoin as far as becoming this global currency is secondary to the uptake of it as a storage of value. That'll all come in time when more and more, when its value becomes more inherent and more capital gets thrown into it and all that technology comes in, and they'll create all this stuff to make it faster without hard forking. That's not even an issue. And as for, like Roger Ver and these guys thinking that it's not going to be better without it, that's ridiculous. I'm happy to have it like this. I'd love to have a little microcap stock with 16 million shares outstanding, and probably half of them aren't even floating. and just wait until the capital comes in and they figure it out how to make it go faster. They will. They figured out how to create Bitcoin. You think they can't figure out how to make it go faster?
Yeah, great points. Here's a question: what asset is Bitcoin most negatively correlated with?
Oh, wow, that is a fantastic question.
And there might not be. I don't think there's a correct answer. I think Bitcoin goes its own way. But what do you think?
Yeah, well, look, in today's historically rigged markets, correlations don't mean anything anyway. But as for Bitcoin, I mean, 99% of the investment world doesn't even know what it is, let alone how it works. So right now, I don't think it has correlations to anything. It certainly correlates to dramatic events, like the Chinese devalue the yuan. Well, yeah, you'll see a big correlation. Or if you see the Marine Le Pen win the French election, which I think very strongly she will, you can bet there's going to be a correlation between the surge in buying of Bitcoin by Europeans and that election. But as for an asset class, I mean, I've been watching it for 2 years now every day. It has no correlation with anything, except during times of crisis. Gold and silver go up and Bitcoin go up. What a surprise. Otherwise, it just does its own thing. It surges when no one's looking. It has its crash events when no one's looking. And the next thing you look up like today, and oh my God, it's at an all-time high. And 99% of the investment world has not a clue. And the only way, as we talked about early in this call, the only way anyone in the world is going to even know about it is if this stupid ETF gets approved, in which case they'll all pile into it, probably take it to 2,000, and then the next week it'll go down to like 1,500, which for us as holders is great, but for all the people who pile in at the top, they're going to get crushed, and then they're not going to want to touch it, and they're going to find reasons why they hate it, and just watch it climb the wall of worry.
You know, you when you spoke to Tone Vays the other day, great interview, by the way. One of the things that was brought up by you is that this is a big world, and gold is up in value in all sorts of other currencies, and that Americans don't traditionally look at that. They look at their little closed world of America and just see, well, what's it worth in terms of dollars, and just that Americans in general don't explore the world type of thing, aren't worldly people. Now, that made me think about Bitcoin, and of course, Bitcoin is there's interest all over the world, but I have been all over the world, and I've got to tell you, there's a lot of hype people like to say about China dominating Bitcoin, and I'm one of those guys who likes to shoot that down, and I think it's been shot down now that the exchanges there are kind of under control, and people are seeing that it's not 90%. But I think there's something out in the open that all of us can see. If you search the internet and you talk to people all over the world, it's the English-speaking dominance. Bitcoin is dominated by people who speak the English language. The companies are in the United States, in Canada, in Europe. They don't all speak English there, but Bitcoin is in the Western world. Now, of course, it's getting bigger in Japan, but I got to tell you, this is in South Africa. It's getting big. It seems to be, and then you've got your cliques like the Portuguese-speaking world, but I got to tell you, this is a Western phenomenon right now. I think people are discrediting how much power people in the United States have over Bitcoin and in North America, the Western world. What do you think about that?
And this is a brilliant observation, and it's in line with a lot of things I've been talking about. First of all, yes, I talk about it all the time. It's incredible. There's 300 million Americans, there's 7 billion other people, and everyone acts in America because we are supposedly exceptional and everything's great. We're the best. We don't even pay attention to anything else. We just think we're the best at everything. And in many ways, we have been. We've had dominance thanks to our reserve currency, which has enabled us to build a very powerful culture. But the fact is that we don't dominate the world. We are a very small part of the world, and we're becoming smaller each day in terms of population percent and in terms of dominance of all kinds. And it's funny because in our sector too, I mean, very few Americans own gold and silver, and very, as a percentage of the population, and there's almost no gold mined here, and we have this fiat regime with the strong dollar, but most of the big commentators, like myself, for instance, are here in America and in Canada. That's it. I mean, yeah, I'm sure there's some others that speak foreign languages, but I guarantee you that I'm far more well-known in China than anyone in China talking about gold is here. And meanwhile, China is the biggest producer and consumer of gold. So the investment world in general is a Western-centric phenomenon, and it's no different for Bitcoin. I mean, look, you see who's talking about Bitcoin. You're definitely one of the top 10 or 20 guys, and you don't live in China or anything. And Tom Bay's, he's from a New Yorker. He's not from technology background in China. That's just what these worlds have been, and in time, that's going to change completely in the gold market and in the Bitcoin market and in the investment market in general, as America just becomes less and less of a power in the world. And as for Bitcoin being dominated by the Chinese, well, yeah, it was loudly disproven when they got rid of the free trading, and you realize they don't trade much more than anyone else as a percentage of their population. I will say about the Chinese, though, that I have a feeling that they own more Bitcoin as a population than any other, simply, well, A, because the size, and B, because they have a long history in the understanding of what's wrong with fiat currency and what's right about storage of value assets, particularly now that the yuan is at its 2-decade low and it's on the verge of a major devaluation. I mean, this guy Jim Rickards is another one of our big commentators here. He said he was just on the ground in China asking people, and they said everyone they know is trying to get their money out of China because they know that the yuan is going to be, if not capital controlled, then devalued. I think there's a lot of misconception about who dominates, but the fact is the Western world dominates the commentary, and the Western world has got it entirely wrong. And it won't be long, whether it's gold, silver, Bitcoin, or pretty much anything, that they are completely discredited, just like their fake news is, and people start to focus on the real news from people like us, and a lot more real news that's going to start to come out from the Eastern Hemisphere.
Great. I have 2 more questions real quick here. Trump administration and Bitcoin. Do you have any thoughts about that?
No, although it's funny, it's well documented that he has a couple of guys in place. This one guy in particular who's, he's a major Bitcoin supporter, and he's, he invests in these things, he talks about it, and he's way up in the administration, which I thought was interesting, because there's no doubt that guy's going to be in Trump's ear, telling him about Bitcoin. I'm not sure he's going to say you need to stop it or help it, but look, Trump's presidency is a revolution, whether you like him or not, or like the fact that America's changing this way or not. Everything about him is change, and he may not even understand a lot of the changes that he's causing. But the fact is, would I rather have someone like him around, or Hillary Clinton, the main statist person in the world? Of course I want change. I want Marine Le Pen, who wants monetary change. I want Donald Trump, who wants revolution. And I want anything that will change this hideous status quo, which has destroyed so many people in the world.
On that note, about the future, about the status quo being ripped down possibly, what's your word of advice for the youth out there in terms of, I guess, not being impulsive, in terms of the future of Bitcoin, in terms of the opportunity out there for the youth? What direction should the youth take in the Bitcoin world and in the world in general?
Right, and you're talking yesterday about not being impulsive, and it's hard because it's human nature, especially when you're young, to be impulsive. But let's face it, this is the most difficult time to be young in the history of this country, and probably in many other countries around the world. Relative to the past of this country, it's America, which it's the most dire, because it's always been easy growing up and the future was so bright, but it's not bright now. It's never been bleaker for youth, and that's why they have to be more diligent and less impulsive, because you're going to need every advantage you can get in this difficult world. And fortunately, because of the internet, you can learn things much quicker. You can be, I was talking to Tom Bays yesterday, he said, I have all these 13-year-olds that contact me. He said, great, at 13 years old, you are smart enough to learn a lot about the world and start making decisions, and you're going to be forced to make those decisions. So yeah, make decisions that are good ones for yourself, and be very careful, because you're going to be competing with a lot of other people. For instance, like my daughter, we adopted her from China. She's taking lessons in Mandarin. It was very important to me that she learns Mandarin, because I think it's going to be one of the few things that gives you an advantage in life. And another way you're going to get an advantage is if you learn about Bitcoin. because it's very likely going to be the biggest growth industry. I'm not talking about asset classes, because I work in gold, I own gold. Gold and silver are going to go up like an asset class goes up. But as a growth industry, I think the change in the monetary regime is going to be probably the biggest growth industry that this world sees in the next decade or two. So yeah, learn as much as you can about it. Save money in Bitcoin, and again, just don't worry about college. You're not going to go to college. It won't be college when you get to college age. Don't worry about all these things that you're told to worry about. Worry about what you think is important. Save your money. Learn about what's important. And don't be impulsive, as Adam says, because if you do, you're going to be competing with a lot of other people for scarce resources.
Beautiful ending. Save in Bitcoin, people. Well, Andy Hoffman, I'm going to give all your links below. I got to update that. Thank you so much for being on the show today. I think I really enjoyed this conversation. It's just another great one. Any final thoughts?
Final thoughts is that, yes, 2017 is going to be a year of incredible change. I've written articles calling it the year of money printing, monetary revolution, and draconian government action. And you're going to see all of the above no matter what corner of the earth you're in. So you better be prepared for it, and you better start considering that the world that you've grown up in is not going to be the same world that you see a couple of years from now.
Okay, everyone. This has been a great time. I thank all the live viewers. We had like 100. Andy Hoffman, thanks again for being on the show. Great time. This is his second time on the show. He will be back in the future, I'm sure. Please like this video, share this video, subscribe to this channel. We post a new video here every day. We're going to get big guests on. Amanda Johnson is supposed to be on tomorrow. There's a little sneak preview for you guys. I'm sure many of you will be going wild because of that, but it's going to be a blast. I'm Adam Meister, the Bitcoin, the Disrupt Meister. I'm going to be in the chat in a second. I will talk to you later. Thanks again, Andy.
You're very welcome.
See you later.